Okay, what are we're going to do a little talk? Or just a description of what's going on?
Yeah. Well, howdy there, guys. Welcome back to, the Christian Kenpo Fellowship / Postmodern Kenpo, as we continue discussing the changes that introducing a high neutral bow into perspective systems has given us insight into its application and how then we're going to teach it to our students. Today, in this video, we're going to be talking about the difference that the high neutral and its transitory nature has influenced the way we do two different types of forward bows. The one of them being the bracing forward, and one of them being the fighting forward. We're going to demonstrate those in a minute, but both of those come from, number one, Mr. Parker was great at showing the bracing angle forward bow, not only in the Infinite Insights books, but also in the basics videos that had come out in the late 80s. It somewhat has been refined since then. That another type of forward bow has been introduced by Dave Brock in Orange County, California, is the fighting forward that requires forward motion, not in-place rotation. And we're going to look at the differences between those two. But before we do, Professor Cole, why is there a need to differentiate between the two?
Okay. We have Christian Kenpo and Postmodern Kenpo. We have formulas for a lot of our stances and our transitions. And I'm going to shoot off the top of my head here. The bracing angle forward bow is basically flexion and rotation without, without changing depth. Okay, it's prominent in Mr. George does it in the video. You can see it in an Infinite Insights. But as I learned in 1979 and 80 through Mr. Brock, that the fighting forward is the formula that we use for penetration. Now we have Dave Crouch to thank for the saying, "Hit through something, not to it." And I'm not saying that a bracing angle forward bow can't hurt. He's been practicing on me, and I'm like, I got bruises. But the fighting forward bow is what I learned from Mr. Brock. Now, I remember it. I've been practicing it for a long time. I came up with a formula for it, and we apply it, but it precedes me. Okay, I didn't create it. I just gave it a label. So the formula for a fighting forward bow is just basically flexion and weight transfer, then hip rotation, because hips control feet. So far I haven't done anything with my feet. Then as I pick up the heel of my right foot, and as I rotate my hips, I move forward. And there's my fighting forward because I really can't see my toes. In a bracing angle, I can kind of sort of see my toes. But in a fighting forward, I can't see my toes at all. And I'm probably going to go forward out of it. With a bracing angle, all I'm going to do is return back, which is okay if you think about some of the like what is it, coordination set and stuff like that, yes, where it demands that you do a perfectly good bracing forward bow.
Very good. And so I'm going to have Ms. Cole step off the screen for a moment and show you guys from a side perspective the difference between the two. So from your standard neutral bow, I'm going to show it both from the standard neutral bow and now the high neutral bow to show the differences. From the traditional neutral bow, for the bracing angle forward is just flexion, the tightening of the muscles in my leg, and then rotation. I'm basically corkscrewing into the ground and creating that bracing angle with my back leg. Now the fighting forward from the traditional neutral bow includes flexion and weight shift together. Shifting weight forward, hence the forward and forward bow, and then rotation that brings out, yes, there's a bracing angle there, but now I've included depth of penetration in my strike. Now, looking at this from the side with now the high neutral bow, as I'm here to get to the bracing angle forward, all I have to do is put down my heel. And I'm already in the bracing angle forward. All it took was just a small manipulation of my height in placing my heel down, and now I'm in that bracing angle forward. From a high neutral bow to go to the fighting forward, once again, still requires weight shift and flexion. The rotation has already occurred, and I put the heel down. Now I have traveled. I'm going to have Professor Cole come up with a stick. He's going to place it on this little dot here. This is going to represent both my height and going to allow us to show a change in depth. If my left foot is starting forward, and I'm going to start with a traditional neutral bow. Here's my vertical head-hip-heel alignment. When I go to the bracing angle forward, it's just from the traditional neutral bow is predominantly rotation. Notice the stick is still here, and my depth of penetration is only to where Professor Cole's hand is. Now, as I show the fighting forward, I'm going to shift weight. Notice my shoulder is now touching the stick. I have gone forward maybe 6 inches. And as I flexion and rotation, here was the hand before. Now here's the depth of penetration. My head is and shoulders and hip, knee, and foot is basically on line with the stick. That is the fighting forward. Thank you, Professor.
Let me say real quick that the head-hip-heel alignment, I'm going to credit Professor Bob Harris, American Kenpo. He talked about that a lot, mostly with kicking, so that we don't compromise any of our zones. But it's also very true about our stance transitions. And Steve Chris did a great job. But all of this is going to lead up to alternating mesas. I'm going to show you something that my son Jack and I made a video of a long time. We're not going to show you the video, but something Jack and I did. It's an emphasis, again, on RI and CI. You get the CIs, you got 2 different CIs, you got 2 different RIs. Because it all goes back to hit through and not to.
So in talking about where this influences the system, where we go back all the way into yellow and orange belt is the technique alternating mesas. And we're also going to touch on long form 1. In alternating mesas, I want to walk through what we would call the precursor pattern, the way in which I was originally shown to step back and then to rotate into your traditional bracing angle and using rotation to create force. With that, I'll do it in the air first, and then also show the postmodern Kenpo version of alternating mesas. Once again, standing naturally. There's something that we've introduced called preposition. We know the name of the technique, we know the attack, we know our response. So then why do I have to stand at an attention stance when somebody's going to hit me? Or in a neutral bow, or in a horse stance? No, I'm going to either put 1 foot forward or 1 foot back. In this case, since I'm going to be stepping back with my left foot, I'm going to put my right foot slightly forward. In that, when the push comes, step back naturally. I'm in that high neutral bow again. Now, in the original version is I'm going to put the heel down. I'm now in your bracing angle forward. I'm going to make contact, rotate, shift weight flexion forward, strike, check, rotate back. Now, in the postmodern Kenpo version, or the Christian Kenpo version, influenced version of this, since the high neutral bow, to get to that bracing angle forward, all I have to do is put my heel down. That means my rotation is increased and introduced earlier in the technique, and also requires more of my response to be active. We would call this technique a when-then. When he pushes me, then I respond. We see punches, kicks, knives, clubs, and guns being nows. And when-thens are hugs, holds, locks, chokes. So we're going to when this. When I get pushed, I'm going to go to that high neutral bow. Now in the postmodern Kenpo version, I'm going to frame. Using body fusion, fusing my elbows and my shoulders close to my body, using these positional checks. Now what I'm going to do is, as I rotate 1, 2, notice the rotation put me forward, and now check and strike. With that, I'll have Professor Cole come up and we'll show how this it works on a body, and then really quickly dive into long form 1 and showing how this starts from the ground up.
I wanted to say real quick, this is talking about a catalyst that has an intent that's different from the next one. So in this situation, I'm going to be up in his grill, up in his face, and I'm just going to give him a little shove. He doesn't have to move back very far because I just committed that much to there. And as I touched, he moves, and there's the forward, there's the bracing angle. Okay? So we're going to examine it after this. But when it comes to me coming after him, you can actually say that me moving up to him as fast as which is prefixing the catalyst, right? And then his response and his intent are going to just destroy me. So slowly, I'm just coming up here, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to push through. Oof. Go back further, go back further. He's going to go back further. He's going to go with the flow and see how long it takes for me to catch up to him in case there's a second push. Okay, slowly. And every time Jack did it and every time Chris does it, it hurts. I remember this. 2004, I think it was. Okay, now we're going to break. We'll do a slow 2-year breakdown.
Well, we already did the in the air. Now we're going to do it on.
I know I just talked too much.
Yeah.
Again, no neutral bow. See, weapons to targets kind of works. Okay, that was me just standing there and giving him a perfunctory shove. Remember, it's the catalyst. The intent was something else. The attempt could have been this, and he still cleared it. The attempt could be come around and do that wonderful
Blinding
technique.
sacrifice.
Yeah, blinding sacrifice.
Yeah.
No, it's not going there. Now here, the second catalyst is prefixed by moving forward, my mass moving forward. That means he has to gain distance. I don't know if I'm on camera. He has to gain distance and find that fighting forward bow, which, hit lower. Sternum's right there. Nice and easy. Both times, weapons to targets. Every single time. He caught me right here at the xiphoid process. Caught me here, right? He's got good control and heavy hands at the same time. All right?
So now, as we have examined what this looks like in difference to alternating mesas, we then go back and go, well, this is elsewhere in the system, right? You know, stepping back to a neutral bow and using a follow-up between a block and a strike. Oh yeah, long form 1. But it's not your traditional long form 1. We do long form 1 as a grab form. Short 1 to short 3 are grab forms. I'll say that again. Short form 1 to short form 3 are grab forms. So for instance, in long form 1, as I go to my starting stance, the meditating horse, we're going to take this not as an uppercut punch, as most people do, Professor. Show the punch.
Oh.
That's the traditional presentation. Why? Because what is the first block? Is a hammering inward from the Kenpo hand's position. There's a difference between a hammering inward and a thrusting inward block.
As of 1989, 1991. This is an update.
So as he grabs, here's this initial catalyst and intent. So what am I going to do? Well, short form 1, create distance. I'm going to pull him off. As I do, he's going to want to hold on to that, right? I'm going to use that hammering inward block. And then if there's a target, boom. Notice the curling and rotation. We would call that a double negative body posture. A single negative is when the body is being adjusted in a single direction. Now, if there's two or more dimensions being manipulated, we call that a double negative. It is going to change our weapons to targets because of the effect on the body. He's not just going and everything's open. I'm manipulating height, width, and depth. Once again, as he grabs, making distance, my friend, taking him off. That is how this bracing angle forward from a high neutral bow changes how we do long form 1. Comments, Professor Cole?
Okay, my spine's out of whack, and he's just hitting 2. He's not hitting through. But the whole idea stems from 1979 and 80.